Welcome to The Inner Practice. I'm your host, Jackie Vandertoon. Today I'm grateful to share the journey of Cailea Davis, a massage specialist, former athletic therapist, yoga teacher, and founder of Grounded Wellness. Born in Orangeville, Ontario, and raised in a household woven with compassion and service, Cailea followed a natural calling into the world of healing. But in 2017, after a sudden loss of her father, a chief paramedic in Windsor, Ontario, her life changed forever. What followed was a powerful and unexpected pilgrimage, a move to the Rocky Mountains of Canada, the discovery of a healing community, profound yoga training in Costa Rica, and the rebuilding of a life rooted in authenticity and soul. This episode is about grief, intuition, transformation, and the ways the body guides us home when we're brave enough to listen. This episode includes discussion of suicide. Please take care while listening and reach out to local supports if you need help. Let's begin. Cailea, I am so excited to talk to you. Cailea, you and I met a long time ago, I feel. Do you remember when Cailea and I met at Sheridan College? Cailea was a student at Sheridan College. Do you remember when that was?
I do. I remember a lot about being in school and you being my teacher, actually. I've been reflecting a lot on this lately.
Oh, I hope it's good stuff.
Oh, it is. It really is.
Cailea, there's one of the things that I love about teaching is reconnecting with students. And, as I go through my life, I can't remember how many students. This isn't about me, but I've taught a lot of students, probably thousands. And there's always few students that stick out in my mind. And you are one of them. And you always kind of sat here in the back of my mind. And I was always wondering, hey, whatever happened to Cailea? And I'm so glad that you and I have had the opportunity to reconnect. And I'm so excited to see your change and your metamorphosis and your growth. You have become such a light to me. So I am so excited to share your story today and learn more about where you've come from.
I'm grateful to be here.
So Cailea, growing up, you have parents who spent their lives caring for others. Your mom is a nurse and your dad was chief paramedic. And that must have influenced you a lot about compassion and service. Can you share with us, those kind of take-home messages or what you were able to learn from your parents?
Absolutely. They have both been really dedicated to their careers. And I have really found that within myself with how I have come into my career. And they have been dedicated to always learning and evolving and advancing and continuously up-leveling themselves as the service workers that they are. And my mom still is, even though she might be semi-retired, she's still working really hard. And I've really always admired that work ethic. They have really showed me how to care for someone on their worst days, through illness, through trauma, through accidents, just sort of how to meet people where they're at and give them exactly sort of what we know how to give to our fullest capacity. And really, they've also given me the gift of connection to others. We've always been a family that knows sort of everyone and everything. Sometimes it's too much information, but it's always been about being a part of big teams of other healers and workers and being in that field of caring. Everywhere we went, my parents always knew somebody or knew something about them, whether it was good, bad, or ugly. But they always showed so much care for each other and were a part of that community. And that's really been a deep part of my connection to this job and career that I've chosen.
I love it, Cailea. That rings so deep to me because when you come from a family of healers, although that's their job, that's something within them that I'm sure that they gave not only to their patients/clients, but to you growing up as well. So can you share a little bit about when did you first become drawn to healing in the human body? Or was that just something you were always knew in the back of your mind that was what you're going to do?
I think it started from very young ages. As far back as I can remember, I always was in awe about how much my parents were in the spotlight, and this reward of, sitting in the ambulance, going to the parades at Christmas, or, walking through the hospital with them, or going to take them a coffee on their break. Like, I've always really enjoyed sort of being around their acts of service. And, growing up, you get the doctor said, and you're playing those roles. And I always enjoyed that. But when I really remember connecting to wanting to do more physiotherapy or massage-based work was around 11 or 12, and I would massage my mom. And her and I both remember this very well because it was around the time my parents actually split up. And, I felt like I was caring for my mom, and I was happy to sort of give her some body work. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but I did. And, I remember her always saying, "Oh, you've got such strong hands, and this is something I can see you doing." And I always knew that I didn't really want to be a nurse or a paramedic. In fact, I hated the hospitals. And so I always knew that that was maybe too much into the trauma or, the first responder part for me. I didn't want as yucky as a job as they had. I wanted to see people a little bit more intact, and less exposed in their worst days. And so I kind of knew sort of my train of where I was heading, but my mom, I think, knew more than I did. And she was actually telling me when we were talking about this about a pamphlet that she saw for Sheridan alumni. She went to Sheridan for nursing, and she saw the AT program on there and felt like it was a perfect fit for me at some point. And that's kind of how I transitioned into that path.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love the fact that you had that connection with your mom, and she was, this is coming from a mom. Your moms are always trying to help their children along, right? Like, hey, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing this? But it sounds like you always had that interest in the human body. Was it more from a heart healing or from a physical healing, or were they kind of separated from the two? And the reason I ask this is because knowing you as a much younger person, I saw more of the physical healing component. This heart thing that I see now
Mhm.
is completely not what I saw as a younger person, which is to be expected when you're, young and maturing.
Absolutely. It was way more physical aspects of the healing that I was first started initially getting into.
Yeah. What was it about the human body that you were drawn to? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, anatomy. I loved anatomy. I had every anatomy coloring book. I remember in high school I did an exercise science class, and I was the top student of the class. Like, I loved nerding out about the human body. I even created a knee joint in class as a big model, and I put so much heart and soul into that project.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I know the human body is fascinating. It fascinates me on a daily basis what we
Yeah.
can learn and what it does for us as well. So you went on to become a certified athletic therapist and you practiced for a while. Can you share a little bit about, kind of that pathway when you were working as an athletic therapist?
Yeah, I had a huge love for sports, and I think that was my main drive, is I wanted to just specifically work with sports and in physiotherapy clinics. I really loved that environment. Right out of high school, I was actually working at a physiotherapy clinic, and I did a co-op placement there for my last 2 years of school, and I loved it. It sparked so much passion in me and interest, and I loved working with sports. It's like, you mean I can get paid to watch sports and be
Right.
part of the team but not be playing? It really did interest me.
Yeah, yeah, I know that's one of the beautiful things about being an athletic therapist is, yeah, people pay me to watch a game and I sit by, the athletes on the field or the court or whatever. So you went on to study massage therapy. And so what path did you kind of see yourself moving? So now you're an athletic therapist. You went on to study massage therapy. You seem to be really directed in more of the human healing, physical stuff, or am I putting words in your mouth?
No, I did. I was working in a busy physiotherapy clinic, and I saw one of the other fellow athletic therapists there also doing sort of the path of massage. And I thought it was really complementary. So I really envisioned myself being a registered massage therapist, being able to bring in more techniques of manual therapy into my practice. I admired how much, just physical touch meant to people and how much they benefited from that. So I knew
Mm.
that I could, strengthen my practice by incorporating that, and just having a different scene. Like maybe it's more of a one-on-one massage, or maybe I'm bringing that into a treatment plan with somebody. So I did an advanced massage therapy program at Hamilton College, and it was perfect. It was everything that I needed it to be. And I felt it just really built on what I had already known. So yeah, I really saw that vision of being in a physiotherapy clinic, working with clients and doing that, but that definitely changed.
Mm. And so this is kind of the path that you're on. I'm going to be a full-time therapist, working with people, doing the athletic therapy, doing the massage therapy. Is this kind of where you're directed?
For sure. And I was working with sports teams and a prep hockey school. I was right in the thick of all of the things. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is when things change. You shared with me that your dad ended up dying by suicide after his battle with PTSD, which obviously is I can't imagine what you would have went through at this point, having experienced death by my mom due to natural causes. That still resonates deeply with me, but you were really young when this happened. Um, are you okay to share with how that may have impacted you?
Absolutely. Yeah, thankfully I just finished my exams for massage therapy, like the program, but I hadn't written my registered massage therapy exams yet. So I had just applied to do the testing for that, and this all kind of came crashing down, and it did. It really broke me down. It was very devastating. Not to get too much into the details, but it really stopped me dead in my tracks, and I questioned everything, including my own life. Like it was really, really hard on me and came so unexpected. I took several weeks off of work and just to try to grieve and deal with the things, but it was incredibly difficult and just really disabling to my whole life. Like I didn't know who I was and what I was going to do going forward, or how I would even be the same ever again. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really hard.
Kayla, can you share with me what age you were?
I was 25 and my dad was 52.
Yeah, so you were really, I mean, really young.
Yeah,
25
yeah,
is difficult to go through the death of anyone. Um, Certainly with the circumstances surrounding this, can I just say that it wasn't something that you expected to wake up one day and, and hear this news?
exactly. Yeah, and it was literally on the news too. Like it was quite it was quite a scene. Yeah, and I also like to always add in that that night that my father did die, he actually saved a life. Like he was working a shift that night, and he actually saved a life as a paramedic, and I was actually able to accept an award for that life saved. Um, well, after this had all happened, but it just always boggles my mind.
Wow, Kaylee, um, that's pretty amazing that, to hear this on the news, to hear that he had saved somebody, and then you went to accept the award on his behalf. That's emotionally, I mean, I'm feeling it right now, like that must be really tough. So,
Extremely, like, yeah.
so Kaylee, at what point did you recognize that returning to work wasn't enough to support your healing? Especially now because you are the healer and you're put in charge of helping people, and yet you're still healing. How did you navigate that? You mentioned that you took some time off, but taking a month off, my senses is not enough to fully
Totally.
grapple with that healing.
Well, like so many people do after they lose somebody, I think there's that point where you're like, I've just got to get back on the horse. I've just got to go back and get back into my routine. And, that grief will be there, but, I'll be distracted and I'll just get back into it. So I did just that. I did my best to go back, and I love the clinic that I was working for, supported me in every way. They're really there for me. Um, yeah, it was a husband and wife, Bolton Physiotherapy. They were my family, and they did such a solid job of like supporting me and seeing me through into my transition back to work. But I think we all knew that as I was trying to show up and be back with my patients and and give my all, that it just wasn't there. And I found myself getting really emotional when people were sharing with me their stories of nearly dying, or they had their needs, and I just felt like I couldn't show up and meet them where they were at. Like, I felt so much sadness in my heart for my own heart, that I didn't have that strength to show up and really be there for the people that needed me. And I could just see myself, I had to take breaks going to the bathroom or the back, and just like having that emotional sort of breakdown, and just being like, okay, I gotta pull it together, I gotta get back out there and put that strong mask on, and put my stuff aside so that I can show up for them. And it just really depleted me. Like, I was tired. I just didn't know what to do with myself, and I wasn't thinking clearly. So I felt like I couldn't use my brain cells the way that I know that they're intellectually there to really think about other people's healing, when I was just needing so much healing. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know how I was going to make it through back to myself.
Yeah. We talk a lot about on this podcast, the theme comes through about wearing a mask, right? Like, we're all conditioned to wear this mask, and can be exhausting wearing this mask. So I can only imagine dealing with your grief, wearing this mask, and having to take these breaks to take this burden of this mask off must have been absolutely overwhelming for you.
Yeah, it was.
So, Cailea, how did you have coping resources that you were able to tap into at this point?
I was seeking like talk therapy with a clinical counselor. And that, honestly, I didn't find it too helpful. I mean, the woman that I was with, I had been seeing her for a long time, and I had my own challenges as a teen with, like suicidal thoughts. And I had a lot of depression as a young person around 18. And so this woman had seen me from that point all the way to this point. So she knew me, she knew my story, but I just felt like talk therapy to me was really, bringing up the pain and just talking about it. And I didn't really feel my way through that. It was just always resurfacing the painful parts, and, just like focusing too much on just how does that make you feel? And I'm like, it sucks, but how do I get through it? Like, there didn't feel like a through it. And I didn't feel supported in what I needed to really find true healing, to be back to the other side of it.
Yeah, is this the point when you left Ontario? Like, you shared with me that you had this, I mean, you're in BC now, but you shared with me you had this kind of um, split where you're like, I'm leaving Ontario, and you went to the Rockies, which is absolutely beautiful. But what made you decide to make that big move?
So this was a really interesting moment, and I remember going through a box of my dad's things, and inside of that box was a BC paramedic patch. And I remember holding it and being like, why did he have this? Like, where is this from? Like, I never recalled my dad talking about British Columbia. I didn't know if he knew somebody there. Like, I had no idea the story behind it, but holding that emblem was just like, you need to go. You need to pack your stuff up and get out of here. And I just felt it so strongly and clearly. And I was like, well, okay, I will see what I can do. And I had a friend that worked at Lake Louise for a few seasons at the ski hill. And I immediately reached out to her and was like, do you think you could get me a job there? And she was like, what? Because I never understood how, she was a good friend of mine, and I never really understood how she could just pack up and leave, how she could just leave the whole country or leave her family in her province and just travel across and just uproot her life. And I never understood it until that moment. I was like, I think I need to change my environment. I think I need to get out of here. I need to change scenery. I need to change my focus and just try something new. So that was my plan. Go to the Rockies for 3 months, do a season, and everything fell into place after that. I got the job right away, pretty much on the spot, and they accepted my girlfriend at the time, so I wasn't going out alone. We were going to drive across the province and through all the way through to the Rockies, and everything lined up. So I knew it was meant to be, and I didn't fully understand it, but at the time, all of my clients, all of my work my work colleagues, like a lot of my friends, everybody knew that I wasn't coming back. And they're like, you're going to go out there and you're never coming back. And I'm like, no, it's only 3 months. I will be back. I promise. Like, I can't leave you. Like, this is where my home is. Like, I belong here. Like, I'm coming back. But little did I know they were all right. I wasn't
Why
coming back.
why do you think they thought that? Like, I mean, my question was when you said you held your dad's kind of emblem, I was like, did you feel it was a calling, or was it like, I'm
Yeah.
curious about the Rockies, or was it a pull? And why is it that everyone else knew but you didn't? Why do you think that?
It was such a call. It was such a call. And I think at that time I didn't really understand what that meant. Like a call, like it was just such a strong gut feeling that I needed to do this. And I know since my dad passed that I would have this sort of strength or like message just come through really strongly. And I remember standing up at his funeral and speaking and realizing that I'm like, where did this come from? Like, I'm so hurting. I don't even know how the words are coming out of my mouth. And I just felt this strong presence and calling and these messages that would come through. And I just learned to kind of trust it and go with it. And I think everybody thought I wasn't coming back because they knew who I was. I was just a wild, adventurous soul that was, belonged in the mountains. I think they saw this part of me that just I think they all knew because a lot of them had been out to BC or kind of knew the sort of the match of BC and who I was. And they're like, well, this is like a match made in heaven. And I didn't know that because I had never seen mountains before. I had never experienced that piece of our country. So yeah, it was a big surprise.
That is absolutely amazing to garner that strength. Speaking at your dad's funeral, for a young person who has undergone such trauma, that is amazing to get that strength. Where do you think that strength came from?
Oh, from him, I fully believe it. I could feel his presence there so strongly, just in my ear, being like, "You've got this. I'm rooting for you." Like nobody here cares how much sadness or crying or uncomfortable you are. Like you have a message, you need to get it out. And I just kept feeling that so strongly. I'm like, "Okay, we're doing this."
I love
And
it.
yeah, it was an impeccable strength that I've only ever felt in that moment. And then kind of further into the rest of my life, I recognize when that strength comes up and I'm like, okay, he's here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I when I was in Costa Rica, sidebar here, I had this profound experience with this woman talking about, my ancestors. They all are behind me. The women are on my left, the men are on my right, and they are holding you and carrying you, and they created this path. And I never thought about it that way. Like, is that like something that resonates with you? Because now I tap into that. I'm like, all of my ancestors
Yeah.
have created this path for me to be where I am today.
Yes, absolutely. I tap into it every day. It's part of my everyday. It's a part of being the healer that I am. I call on them when I need anything and everything support, messages, clarity, guidance, protection. I call on it multiple times a day. And I feel the deep connection. It's like a muscle that I never knew I had, and now I'm flexing it and using
Yeah,
it every day.
I love it. I love it. And by the way, having been to BC many times, BC is absolutely beautiful. So I can completely understand because you ended up in Invermere, which is nestled in the Rockies. And you mentioned that they provided you with a lot of support, that community that you found. Can you talk a little bit about how that community in Invermere supported your healing journey?
Yeah, I made some really amazing friends and connections, and again, all really aligned in such a beautiful way and just very synchronicity. And I remember my mom came to visit, and we went to the Radium Hot Springs. And I remember going in there, and we're having a nice soak in the mineral waters. And I remember looking at the spa and being like, I'm going to work there one day. Like, I can really see myself. And I wasn't quite ready to start getting back into healing yet. And I was a little bit on the fence of like, well, am I ready to go back and working with people? Like, I wasn't sure quite yet. And so it really took me sort of feeling deeper into what capacity I had and where I was at in my life then. And I had made enough friends and had enough transitions in my life so that I thought I was ready. And I think I was. And I went back and I ended up getting the job, and I met the owner of the spa that worked at the Radiant Hot Springs, and we connected. And she was also from Ontario, and we connected on a really deep level. And she actually became a really close friend and mentor to me. And so I felt really comfortable knowing her, taking her, she took me under her wing and brought me into her business, and I got back into it. And I was thriving. I was loving it. I was loving the team that she had together. And it brought me into the community in a way that I didn't even know I was needing. And I met amazing people that became really, really close and dear friends to me. And that sort of kept the ball rolling as to where each next step took me in my journey, being more and more healed. And part of that was actually working with more clients again.
Mm. Haley, I'm kind of hearing a deeper spiritual thing, and I'm not sure if that's the right word. Maybe it's tapping more into what the universe is telling you. Am I correct in hearing that, part of your dad's passing allowed you to tap into more of that, or was that someone who you always were, like listening for, I don't want to say messages, but listening for guidance from beyond who you were, or maybe searching deep into your heart or your soul?
I believe at a really young kid, we all have that strong gift. And I think throughout our life and, changes in our life and childhood and parenting, like through our lives, I feel like it gets deconditioned or it kind of gets shut off. And so I think I lost that part of myself for a really long time throughout my younger sort of early teens and into my teenage life and my young adult life. I think I was really disconnected from that part of myself. And coming back into Invermere and into this community and into the nature of these big humbling mountains, which I do have to say, the first time I saw the mountains, I cried. I cried really hard because I felt so small and so humbled that there was such a bigger part of this world that I had no idea of. And I think that really put me in my place. And it was very spiritual. I just felt, and I didn't even know what being spiritual meant at that point either. Like it was just such a feeling that you're like, okay, you can't make this up. I definitely feel something here. I don't know what it is or, what to make of it. And I think me tapping into that a little bit just sort of allowed, whatever that higher power might be or whatever anyone chooses to believe in, just to drop little nuggets on my path, just to see if I would pick them up. and I started doing that. And those little nuggets were people and opportunities and things that just sort of kept coming my way. And I'm just like, okay, this feels good to do this. So I'm going to listen. And I'm like, I got all the way to BC. What else is next? And I just sort of kept an open mind and allowed to sort of see these little nuggets present themselves one at a time.
I can't tell you how much I love the fact that you're listening, right? And you call them nuggets of wisdom or whatever, but that makes my heart sing that you are open to whatever the universe has to tell you. Because, I certainly think when you have that open heart, wow, the world opens in a way that you have no idea versus moving down a path that you created when you were, 19. I must stay on this path. So kudos for you for allowing your heart to be open for that. Haley, I have a question since this is about yoga and knowing who you are now. I would never have guessed when I first met you, this would have been a conversation you and I would have had. But when did you first discover yoga and what drew you into that practice?
So when I first started doing yoga, I think I was in my early 20s. I was doing a few classes in Ontario and I dabbled in it more for the fitness benefits for sure. I looked at it as a way to stretch my body, to move my body. I was really interested in the human body. So strength and mobility and stability were really important to me. So I was really into the asana-based focus. I was doing classes fairly regularly, but on and off and dabbling in different teachers and versions of it. I got really into aerial yoga and using the silks that hang from the ceiling, because I found such a therapeutic assistance with those. And I thought it was amazing how you could do so much traction of the body. And with my sort of background with muscles and healing and getting into athletic therapy, it was really supportive for me. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But I didn't really, I remember it making me feel really calm, but I wasn't really connected to myself in the sense that I am now. And so I wasn't really meditating. I would lay in Shavasana and my mind was probably at 100 different places. And I didn't really know why we needed to do that other than I'm like, okay, we just worked out really hard. Let's just take a minute and breathe.
Yeah.
I have a very different mindset on it now, but yeah, that was sort of like the beginning of where I was first sort of woven into yoga.
Yeah, it's always funny because my yoga story is kind of the same. Like is fitness, and I always joke that I was full competitive yoga because I was going to stretch more, and I was going to strength. Like I'd start my watch and count the calories and all that stuff. And that crazy shavasana was I have to be here because I'm too polite not to leave. And then things started to change, and I don't, you know. It was actually kind of Shavasana where things started to change. So what about you? When did it switch from the asanas to more something else, like more breath, more meditation or whatever? Do you remember that switch kind of flipping, or was it just kind of a gradual thing?
Yeah, so it really for me it was when I was in Invermere and I had taken a pretty big break from doing yoga. Like, from the moment sort of where I was in massage therapy school, my dad passing, there was no yoga really. And when I was trying to get back to work, like I wasn't practicing, I wasn't really attending classes. Like I did fall into quite a depressive state of not really wanting to do much. And so I didn't really find yoga again until I was working at the Radium Hot Spring Spa. And the beautiful woman that owned it, she was a yoga teacher. And so I just was like, okay, why not I start going to her classes? And, she was encouraging me to come along. And her classes were really amazing. Like it was a very vinyasa base. And, her title for her class is Root to Rise. And there's just a sense to me of wanting to really connect deeper to myself. And I think, when I first approached it back, it was still very much that physical movement. But there was little bits that came in that kind of invited me to go a little bit deeper into that connection to my body. And I think it was more when I started doing more of a practice that was more yin based. And through, my mentor, teacher, boss, friend, Diane, she introduced me to another really close girl of hers. And she was a teacher that brought more yin yoga into my life. And that is when I really slowed down and I really started to connect to the teachings of flow and breath and meditation and different pranayama practices. And she really opened a new version of yoga to me that I hadn't really done much of. And so I think the combination of both of them being really close friends and mentors really brought me more depth of the practice. And because I was in a state of needing that healing and that community and that connection, they really sort of brought me new teachings and new perspectives on what yoga was and how, it brings their life, difference and how they kind of incorporate the teachings into their life. And so that to me really opened things up in a new way.
Mm. So you saw yoga not just from the posture perspective, but you saw that transformational power of yoga off the mat. Is that kind of what I'm hearing from you?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. And I noticed how it started to make me feel more supported, in myself. And I mean, it was the two of them and doing those practices pretty consecutively for a few months that I realized that I should probably take some more training and do this too. Um, at the spa that I was working at, she was encouraging me to start teaching a class. And I was like, well, I really love teaching people about their injuries and how to better themselves and how to connect more with their bodies. And so I was like, yeah, I could teach a class. And I'm like, what based on my knowledge could I do to teach? So I ended up teaching a myofascial ball rolling class where we took massage balls, and I taught what trigger point release was, and I worked with people to bring them into a place of easing those trigger points on their own with the self massage techniques, and then using what my knowledge was of stretching and strengthening the body in different ways. And my classes were packed. I had like 12 to 14 people squeezed into these little spaces, just loving what I was offering. And I was like, hey, there's something here. I need to follow this. And so then I went on to do my yoga teacher training.
Can I just back up a little bit because I'm curious when you're doing these myofascial kind of things with the balls, was it strictly just lay on the ball and move, or was there some yoga kind of esque components to this as well?
It was mostly like I had a kind of a flow of like, we address where the trigger point is. We sit on the ball or lay on the ball or put it in that spot. And then we're going to do a stretch afterwards. And we might do like a muscle activation with it. So it was very sort of broken up. Like I think we started from the feet and went all the way up to the head, or vice versa. But it wasn't really like I wasn't really teaching yoga. Like sure, some of the stretches might be incorporated as a yoga asana, but no, it was very clinical. It was very much my athletic therapy mind, and I was very much sticking to what I felt confident in bringing to the table into the class.
Right, right. That biological mindset of tissue, from the physiological kind of perspective. Um, Interesting. So you've been encouraged to teach classes, and when did you make the leap into yoga teacher training?
Well, I started researching, and I was researching for quite a long time before I found the one, because I felt like I was encouraged by a lot of people to just keep researching until I had that feeling of this is the one, because there are so many out there, and it is overwhelming trying to pick which teacher, which place, which style of yoga did I want to do. Like there was so much that went into researching that and sitting with each thing. So I was looking for quite a while, and then it finally found me, or I found it, and I had that feeling of like, okay, I have found the one. I'm going to Costa Rica.
Costa Rica is near and dear to my heart, so um, it's magical. I can completely
Mm,
see. But you actually found someone named Yogi Aaron Starr. What
yeah.
spoke to you about kind of Costa Rica and studying with this particular yogi?
Well, I always wanted to go to Costa Rica. I had never been, and something about the rainforest was just another one of those little callings of like, I gotta go there. Like, I want to see the monkeys, and I just want to experience Costa Rica. And I remember in high school there was a trip that went there, and I didn't get to go. And I remember feeling really bummed out. I'm like, one day I'm going to go to Costa Rica. And so this sounds, it felt like the right place. And so I narrowed my search down to trainings in Costa Rica, and I looked at so many, and I came across Yogi Aaron, and he had so many videos online, and he has written a book that I picked up and read, and his website was just so thorough. Like I remember just sitting for hours and hours and hours listening to his different videos, hearing his story, which by the way was one of the things that captivated me the most, was just his story and how yoga saved his life. He was
Hmm.
actually in India hiking the Himalayas, and he broke his femur. And as an athletic therapist, I mean, the amount of times that we talked about breaking your femur in sports and how big of a deal that is and can be. He talked through how yoga saved his life in that moment, and he spent days in the Himalayas trying to get, out of there and getting the care that he needed with a broken femur. And just how the practices of breath and connection to
Hmm.
yourself and staying calm and all these things, I'm like, wow, if this guy can break his femur in the Himalayas and use yoga methods to get out and be where he's at now, I'm in.
I love that.
And
I love that.
yeah,
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 that
it
is.
really spoke to me.
Yeah, I can completely see because I am so intrigued because I can see it in hindsight how, using the breath, using the mindfulness, using the meditation can assist someone who's in tremendous pain. That is fascinating
Mm.
to hear that story. So I can see how you were drawn to it. Was there a moment during your training that shifted something within you?
There was a lot. um, but that being said, there was definitely a few times that was really potent. And like I chose this training for a few reasons. One, I really wanted mantra to be involved, and it was one of the things that I was most uncomfortable with. I was very uncomfortable with my voice and chanting. Felt so foreign to me, but there was something within that I'm like, I think there's something about going to yoga teacher training where you're supposed to be in your discomfort in
Mm.
order to find that transformation. So I really wanted a training that incorporated mantra and traditional Indian practices as well. So, we did a whole month training. I did a 28-day immersive course in Costa Rica with yoga Aaron, and every morning it was the same kind of flow. We had morning silence until after breakfast, so nobody could talk to you. We did a whole practice in the morning. We ate breakfast all in silence, and this was really potent to me. I just remember just being around people and not having to talk
Mm.
and noticing how that made me feel. And just like not that you had to share anything. And I think I had some of my most, powerful conversations with no words with people, just, sitting beside someone at the beach watching the sunrise come up in those Adirondack chairs and you're just having your smoothie and looking out into the distance and not saying a single word, but feeling like you sat and said so much. Just being in that mindfulness. And we did many practices like that really just had a lot of time for me to sit and ponder my thoughts without having to have that mask on, to have, to pretend I'm not a hurting person inside. And there was one really specific point that I was feeling this deep sense of, sadness and anger, and parts of me from my childhood were really coming up throughout the practices. Like, he was encouraging us to really go deep and connect to ourselves and how we can love ourselves more. And at that time, like, I didn't love myself, and I had a really hard time connecting to parts of me. And one of the teachers that was assisting him, named Karina Mirsky, her practice is really in interfamily systems, like parts work. And so meeting these parts of me that I would stuff away and put away and not really want to face were really being summoned in this training. And I was sitting with one of the assistant teachers and, having a bit of a meltdown and not sure what to do with these angry, sad little parts of me. And she had me visualize that sad, angry little girl and to go back to her. I was around 10 years old. It was around where my parents split up, and I just felt so helpless. And she asked me what I would say to her and visualize
Mm.
her. And what came out was just that I love you, and that you're not broken and you're not the reason that your parents split up. And, a lot of just giving that power back to her. And that really broke me in that moment. Like I just felt so much. But I had someone sort of support me, and I felt safe to go there because I don't think I had really ever felt that sense of safety and support to go there and to really give back what I needed in those moments that I wasn't getting, and I was resistant to it so much.
Was it a
So that
sense of
was a big
freedom?
pivotal point. Yeah, oh,
So,
it's so much freedom. Yeah, and forgiveness, a lot of forgiveness. I think holding on to this sad, angry emotions was just so much forgiveness for each of my parents and just doing what they could in those moments with the resources that they had available, and knowing that, I didn't need to hold it against them for that sad, angry girl that sort of, stuck it all in there and pretended to be fine and resisted any help and just wanted to carry on and have her parents back together. But, at that young age, 10 is so hard. And so that was a big part of going back to that and really releasing a lot of that for me that kind of allowed me that freedom of those emotions.
that's fantastic. One of the things I love about this podcast for me is I take away so much from guests, right? And that's what I love is, you talking about just being in silence and that it's okay to be in silence, that you don't have to have conversations with people, that two people can just sit and watch the sunset or listen to the waves or go deeper inside. And you've got somebody who's there supporting you in person, but not necessarily in words. What an amazing deep experience that you were able to have. That's beautiful.
Mm.
Um, Haley, what did yoga support? How did yoga, because you mentioned that you were, in talk therapy for a while with dealing with other things, and certainly with your dad's death, but how did yoga support you through your grief in other ways that maybe talk therapy or other modalities couldn't?
It was really just deepening a connection to myself and strengthening my ability to love and nurture myself. And instead of, we always have this expectation, I find a lot of the time, for something outside of us to fix us or change us or, help ease the pain. And I mean, really, it's just going deep into ourselves and giving ourselves what we need and that nourishment and, whatever it is specifically for you, but it's always within us. And so yoga has really brought me to that place on the mat where it's all about me. It's all about me connecting to me and where I'm at and just giving myself the safe place to go within myself. Versus having somebody hold safe space for me, I needed to hold safe space for me,
Mm,
to feel like I could go there because I resisted it so much. The amount of times people would say, "Oh, just take some deep breaths." It's like, oh, like I want to hold my breath and not breathe when you say that.
hmm
But that was
mm,
where the transformation really took place, was being able to give myself what I needed in those moments of just, maybe it is crying on the mat, maybe it is just moving a little bit or sitting and breathing and allowing myself to feel safe in doing that.
Um, oftentimes we, particularly in North America, we like quick fixes, right? Like just take away this pain immediately. What do you got to take it away? Was this something that occurred immediately, or was it slowly, bit by bit?
Oh, it was slowly, bit by bit. It's definitely been a process. It didn't all happen at once. It's been building that trust with myself. Like, I see when a new client comes into my office, you know, they're really kind of apprehensive. And how much do I share? How much do I let this person I don't know in and touch my body? And I find that we have that same relationship to ourselves, like sitting ourselves in that chair and questioning them, and meeting that part of yourself that you're like, oh, how have you had that connection, and
Mm,
and how do you build that trust, to be able to touch yourself safely, to listen to yourself safely. Like, it's such a big component of how I heal and work with people, but it also mirrors how I work with myself. And I think that's just such a strong idea of where sort of grief has taken me out of the world of healing and then brought me back in with a whole new, like, whoa, I need to
right.
meet myself just as much as I need to meet that, person that's coming into my clinic.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you, how has yoga helped you with, your grief, but also with how you treat people as well? Which you kind of answered, but if you didn't have yoga, and this is tough to answer because hindsight's 2020, where do you think you would have been with your grief?
Oh, I don't think I would even be here, honestly. I don't think that I would be alive. I really questioned my own life when all of my grief came in, and the dark, deep hole that I was in. Like, I didn't see purpose in my life. Like, I had battled depression, well beyond my knowing that my dad had depression and this PTSD, but I never really kind of got through that. I was just sort of, I kind of felt like I put a band-aid on those emotions and carried myself through school and did the things I was supposed to do. And then, having him take his life, I was like, what's stopping me from doing the same? Like, why do I need to be here? Why me? And all of those things really arose. And, if I hadn't taken the path that I did to leave Ontario and to come out here, like, I don't know that I would be here. I think
Mm,
that depression and those emotions, I think, would have still been very present. And I don't think I would have broken through the way that I have in my life, had I stayed stagnant in that environment and, with the same people around me and just that energy that was bottled up inside, I don't think I'd be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I'm so glad that you found yoga or yoga found you, right? To help with that healing, to note that, we have these feelings of depression and anxiety and all these other mental health things, but there's something out there that can help you if you're open to reaching and grabbing hold. So for me and everybody who's listening, we are so glad that you found that healing. You've done a lot of work to help heal you. So thank you. Because now you're sharing, right? You're sharing how
Yeah.
yoga has helped you. And just by telling your story, there are other people out there that are healing or will heal because of your story. So thank you so much.
Mm,
One of the things that
absolutely.
I am absolutely fascinated by is the healing power of yoga that occurs on the mat, but occurs off the mat. Where do you see that? I mean, you've mentioned working with clients, but like, can you kind of give examples or where that healing power, has helped you off the mat?
Yeah, I've been reflecting a lot on this lately, and I've allowed myself to listen to what people tell me that they notice about me. And with a few new clients recently, they've mentioned how I present myself and the aura or the energy that I give off was just something that really drawed them in and made them feel safe and comfortable. And they really noticed how easygoing I was and grounded. And I really give a lot of yoga a credit for how I carry myself in my life and how I sort of have this energy that I have. And because that wasn't me before all of this grief and journey happened. I feel completely different with the energy that I put out into the world because this new connection that I've had and built on with myself has allowed me to love myself and who I am in my skin more. So I find that sort of projects out of my body in a way that makes people feel drawn in or comfortable. And I love that because it's really reflected me as a healer and how I can hold space for people. I mean, yoga has allowed me so much presence in my life, and I find that that's one of the biggest things that my clients come and tell me is like, you're just so present with my body, and you really listen into where I'm at in this moment. Like you kind of take that clinical brain and it's there in the background giving you like the techniques and the things that can be helpful, but you have this way of just going deep into really listening and having a way of meeting people where they're at and understanding like the layers of healing aren't just the physical. Like it's so much more than that. And I wish I knew, way back then what I know now, but I realized that I can just keep bettering myself with understanding how healing works from like a very multi-layered dimension of tissues and layers and energy and trauma and just the way things get stored in the body, and having that understanding has really come into my practice with how I see people and how I put myself out there. And I recognize when I'm not regulated or I'm having a bad day that I know that I can be authentic in letting people know that, and not having to wear that mask so much, because I think people also can really relate when you're like, oh, that was a really honest answer. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you I'm fine if I just, had a fight with my partner this morning or had a meltdown. I'm not going to invest the details into the situation, but I'll say, I'm having a rough day, and
Mm,
that's okay. And
mhm.
people are also like, oh, so am I. And, you start talking about, yeah, maybe it's something with the moon, who knows?
Right.
But yeah, just being able to relate more has allowed me to hold space for others. But I wouldn't be there without yoga. I needed to hold that space for myself first. And I think that really influences and inspires people to see the benefits of that work.
Yeah. I'm just like my brain is on fire here. I have so many ways I want to ask you these questions, but just, my comment is one of the things that I have grown to appreciate is healing is not just biological. And it is so much more. And people can't heal unless they deal with the psychological, the sociological, the existential, the purpose of their life. And
Mhm.
I can't thank you enough for giving that to your patients, your clients, because that's what's making the difference, right? That well-roundedness, that ability to be able to see it's not just a knee injury, a lower back injury, it's more. So let's unpack that. I'm giving space
Yeah.
for people to say that. Um, wow. And I know wow was a pretty bland kind of thing, but my mind is on fire that you're able to do this, in particular because you were a student of mine. And, way back when, I don't think I was there sharing how important that was, but this has completely flipped my own way that I teach and think about healing. So thank you for embracing that without probably having the formal education to move forward with that. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
I just want to say it's something that I encourage every person that's in some sort of, medical profession or healing profession to really invest yourself in, the healing of your own stuff for sure, and meeting yourself in those depths, because that only allows you to show up better for other people and to really understand how to work through those things. It's so important. And I know that through my practice of like doing Thai massage and some of the energy training that I've done, like I've done, some Reiki training, which is pretty unfamiliar to people still, but hitting those different modalities has really allowed me to go deeper in myself and see like how some of these things work in their different aspects of healing and how it faces your traumas and your emotions. And so going there and then opening yourself up to just trying to understand some of these things can really open you to a whole new world of how to meet your clients and to be the best healer that you can be.
yeah, amen, amen, sister. Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. Healing yourself as a caregiver. And often my yoga classes, and I'm like, it's hard to pour from an empty cup, right? So it's hard to give
Yeah.
to others when you're not feeling full yourself. Um, can you talk a little bit about your own practice? First off, the name is Grounded Wellness. And can you share where that name comes from and how, if you have a client coming to see you, like how do you meet them? Knowing your background as an athletic therapy, massage therapy, and as a yoga teacher, you're kind of different, I'm guessing. So where did the name come from, Grounded Wellness?
Well, it came to me, I really sat and meditated on this for a while, what my business name was going to be. And I came from a place of like, where am I? Where am I coming from? What am I bringing to this? And the thing that I felt the most that BC has given me is the lessons on how to be grounded. And even what does that even mean? Like I have just connected to the nature out here in a whole new way that's taught me so much about myself. And to be grounded is to really be rooted, I think in your own body and being comfortable with yourself. And it's just such a encapsulated feeling. And I think it's come up even throughout our whole talk today is, how much work I've done to just feel safe in my body and to have that sort of rooted anchor in this purpose, in this world. And that to me is just so much, grounding work, because if we're in our head, we're not really grounded. We're up in the universe, we're out in the ethers, we're not present, we're not here. We're either in the past or we're in the future. And that can be very sporadic for our mind and our nervous system. And I find so many people are like that and don't know how to get grounded. So I felt really deeply connected to that. And I chose to just say wellness because I do so many things. I didn't want to limit myself by just saying massage or body work, or because I do so much more than that. So grounded wellness really came from this place of like a deep rooting in yourself. And I have the little motto on my business card that say, the deepest roots grow where the strongest winds blow. And so I've taught, so much things can get thrown at you and blow you over. But, if you can ground really deeply into yourself, nobody can take you out. You can stand really strong. Yeah. And I really connect to the trees out here. Like, they have held me in many ways. So I've really brought my business around that whole encompassing idea. And how I meet my clients is just in that nature. It's meeting them where they're at. And so we'll sit down and have a little conversation before they jump on the table. And, I ask them the whole health history, maybe not in depth as we might have learned in school or somehow some clinicians do, but I find I've got to take and read the person a little bit and notice, sometimes people walk in the room and they're like already trying to strip their clothes off. They just want touch. They don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, okay, I see you. Pump the brakes a hot second. What are we going to focus on today? It's just funny. And then some people want to sit there and they want to tell you their whole story of, all the bits and bobs of they have nooks and crannies of their body and what they need to be, addressed and so that they can feel safe. And so my approach is really just to meet people where they're at. And, there's times where I do more in-depth conversations and there's times where it's very short. And I recognize that their time is precious and, that they really value wanting to be on the table. And so sometimes I even just do my health history questions while they're on the table. I get them there and they're comfortable, and then I just keep the blanket over them, and I just start by having them breathe and going through a body scan and what's rising. Because I find that when people sit and they get questioned about the whole story, every injury, every surgery, it brings them back to all of that trauma. And it can really surface a lot where they came in feeling not too bad, but now they've had to, dig up all this stuff, and now their whole energy has changed and it's made them almost feel worse than when they came in. Or, so it's kind of reading people and knowing like, okay, what do they need? And in this moment, especially in the first time, because we all know the first time someone comes in, it's just getting to know them. It's getting to know their body. You're not going to necessarily fix someone in the first visit, but you're going to just see them. And it's all about gaining that trust and just really meeting them where they're at. It's so funny when my clients, like every session with me is so different. And because I have so many tools in my toolbox, I let those tools call me. And I might approach someone and be like, I have a very full toolbox. This session can go so many ways, but I want you and your body to tell me what it needs today. And, we'll pick and choose with what you're comfortable with, and we'll start there. And, in our futures to come, it could go many different ways. And people love that about me. They come to see me and every session is different. So it's always sort of challenging their comfort level and what their body's needing. And it's never the same routine massage that some practitioners just do that. And some people also really love that familiarity of what they're going to get, but not me. I like to challenge the person in the body and to just see things from different layers. And sometimes it's just very light before we can get into the depths of what they've got going on. Or sometimes you go really deep because that's what they want, and then you got to work your way back out. And so it's really, really interesting seeing me as like a full toolbox of many hats and how to bring those little bits in.
I want to come to see you. That is absolutely beautiful. And as you're talking about, your business and your motto, I was thinking of the giant redwoods and the depth of their roots, but the roots intertwine, and the trees hold each other up to prevent them from falling over. So you are a root hanging on to your clients, helping them in the case that the wind comes. And I'm sure they're giving to you as well. What a beautiful clinician you are. I'm always sensitive to the time, and I have learned so much. Just absolutely, you've encaptured me in how you speak, and I've learned so much. But one of the questions I always like to ask people is, can you speak to your younger self? the individual or the child who, had a fascination with the human body, who massaged her mom, and that caring that you had, what would you say to that young girl today?
I think it always comes back to just loving her in her most authentic form, and allowing nobody else to take that from her, to just know that she is perfect exactly the way that she is, and to be your authentic self and to not hide that away. It's just so important to just live through that young, playful, bright, enthusiastic version of our child that's just so innocent and daring to make mistakes and to just do whatever feels really good in those moments. And yeah, I would just encourage her to stay that way and to just love herself more and more.
Yeah, and as adult, I get the sense that's what you're telling yourself now.
Always, every day.
Yeah. Kaylee, if someone's dealing with grief, what would you suggest to them?
Find a way to go inward that feels safe and supportive. That can look so many different ways. It could be yoga, it could be a massage, it could be, just sitting with yourself with a friend or someone or a pet, but just to be able to put your hands on yourself and to just hold yourself in a really nurturing way, and to just try to find, sometimes we don't love ourselves. And I find, grief is so much love. It's that love for that person or that thing or that situation. So finding a way to honor that love that you have for whatever you've lost, and to find how you can also receive that love back into your body, and to see the light and the darkness, to hold it all in one sort of encapsulated area. I think holding the light and the dark together, that yin and that yang, that balance of sadness and joy, just finding ways of bringing those things together, because it's all part of the human experience.
Kaylee, that is beautiful. I thank you so much for this time that we've spent together. I thank the world for you, your wisdom, your strength, your insight, your ability to hold space for others, your ability to be a clinician, how you interact with people. It has truly been a pleasure to see you grow. And I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you. I feel like this conversation could have gone on for another hour. And it's just been so great. Being able to share this story has been really healing for me too. It's just been a way of really reflecting on where I've come from and where I'm heading. And it's just been a beautiful testament to all the work and the healing that I've done. And it's been really a blessing to share it and to reflect on it.
Thank you. You've helped so many in this chat we've had today. Thank you for listening to this powerful episode of The Inner Practice with the incredible Cailea Davis. Her journey through grief, intuition, and reconnection is a reminder that healing is layered, intuitive, and often guided by moments of deep inner knowing. If her story resonated with you, or you want to learn more about her work at Grounded Wellness, you'll find links in the show notes. Just a reminder to listeners, if you struggle with thoughts of suicide or know someone who may be struggling, there is help. Please reach out to your local mental health supports. If you are listening in Canada or the US, please call 988 or reach out to local supports in your community. You are loved. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, share, or follow on your favorite podcast app. Your support helps these stories reach those who need them the most. Until next time, I'm your host, Jackie Vandertoon. Thank you for listening to The Inner Practice.